What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. I'm Scott, here with Michael and Drew, as always, and this is the Elder Scrolls podcast. Today, we are talking all about Meridia, the Lady of Infinite Energies, the Bright Lady, the strict but fair arbiter of inner luminescence.
The Shining Bitch.
Yeah.
That's one of
or
her
the
names.
Glister Witch.
Or the Lady of Greed.
Yeah. So she is the Daedric prince, most associated with light and energy of light and so on. And as we know and have talked about before, she is one of those Daedric princes that doesn't necessarily fall into strictly a Daedric prince in the same way that Malakath is a corrupted form of Aedra. She is a Magna Gi that was cast out basically for what's the word?
Illicit spectra.
Yeah, I know the illicit spectra.
Consorting with illicit spectra, who were the Daedric princes. And
yes.
when Magnus found out, she was kicked out and found her way into oblivion.
Was it Magnus or just the other Magna Gi?
I don't know. The whole
Thought
lot.
it was just But anyway, so then what she's sort of obsessed with light and Aetherius and stuff. So her colored room's realm is made, bending the light that's coming from Magnus and stuff that's shining through Aetherius. But
and Magnus is said to be like her father. In different mythology, he created
Khajiit one, I think.
Yeah, in the Khajiit mythology, they actually. So I mean, which doesn't really make a lot of sense if the idea is that they're all from an Fadamai's litter. But I guess Meridia isn't explicitly mentioned as coming from them, so perhaps the litter mates go on to have more litters and whatnot, and it's just not explained.
I mean, I guess Magna Gi also literally, it says a translation, children of Magnus or Star Orphans.
Because it said that
for gods,
he made them out of the light or something like that. He didn't have a mate to create.
So I swear there's been mythology references to them as the followers of Magnus and the way it's been said.
Yeah, there has been.
Some things. But
I mean, if we're talking about gods, you can kind of say it's a metaphor that he's their father. It's it's not going to be.
You could say that she's
true.
got daddy issues because she is obsessed with light.
Yeah.
And
out of curiosity, is Mehrunes Dagon the grandson of Magnus? If the Magna Gi created Mehrunes Dagon and Magnus is the father of the Magna Gi,
perhaps.
Anyway, that's
it's Granddaddy Dagon now. Sorry, no, it wouldn't be.
But
it's grandson.
Yeah, he's a grandson.
He's not the daddy
boy.
at all. Yeah.
But yeah, so we can start talking about her peak, which I would argue is during the early First Era / Merethic era, basically the time when the Aelids were starting to worship Daedra, and Meridia was one that they really, really liked, and that is because she represented what they thought was the purest form of the fourth element, which is light, rather than the traditional idea of just fire or flame. So a lot of them were very obsessed with Meridia, cities like Daeladil's one of them. There's other cities with the name, and then plenty of Aelid kings and stuff followed her, like Umaril the Unfeathered was her immortal champion. There is also the King Narrowmore of, I forgot the name of the ruin, but it's on the Gold Coast, who was also very devoted to Meridia. And you can almost see a little bit of a crossover in what Meridia's greatest Daedric servants are the Aurorans. And those Aurorans were part of the Aelid armies that fought against the Elysian rebellion at the time, so the men trying to free themselves. So for humans and everyone looking at Meridia, she could kind of be seen pretty very much associated with the Aelids, really. I don't think there's any other big culture where she has been such a centerpiece.
Well, when you get into the topic of the Aelids becoming, diverging so far from their origins and becoming Daedra worshippers, you think of Meridia. She's a really good gateway Daedra, if you put it that way. Of she's got a lot of Aedric elements to her. Obviously, even after being separated from the Magna Gi. So yeah, it makes sense that their veneration for her opens the door to a bunch of other Daedric princes.
Yeah, absolutely. another thing we should really talk about too is she, also called the Lady of Greed. Some people look upon her less favorably, but it seems that she often uses her like mortal worshippers and stuff as tools or as means to an end, and she doesn't like kind of the concepts of like free will and stuff, and it kind of seems interesting for like a Daedric prince, but as we know, she's kind of not. The Daedric prince kind of title's a little bit flustered, and if you actually look at like Jiggalag's a god of order who's not really into free will, a Daedric prince either, so it's not necessarily that like every single Daedric element or prince has to be like inherently chaotic. It's more so the opposing force. There is a bit, but
Yeah, well, because if you're going strictly by the definitions of Adric and Daedric as ancestor and not ancestor, despite what happened to Meridia, you could still argue that she's inherently an Aedra. She was a part of the creation, and she was the ancestor, one of the the god ancestors to mortality.
Until she fled.
But they fled, but they'd still be considered Aedra, right?
Well, the
All
thing
of
is,
the
I guess they
Magnus.
lump Magnus in with
Yeah.
Aedra. But
because I mean,
at the
if you were there for
same time-
most of it, there's no sacrifice, but
Look,
which I guess is the most important thing.
We've talked plenty of times about this, but just for the listeners, like Daedra and Aedra are often arbitrary. Like if you go and look at the Khajiit pantheon, they make no such distinction. Their distinctions lie across different lines. It's like not always this pure. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not this. It's a very elven idea, and that elven idea has flowed into a lot of into the imperial cult religion and stuff. So they treat Daedra disfavorably, but like there's nothing. It's not like they're inherently an evil demon outside of like perspective, even though that's the perspective of a lot of like mainstream Adric religions. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Meridia would look quite demonic to a lot of people after everything she's done. I mean, on a surface level, she's not, because in a way, like Stendar or other Aedra who want to abolish undead or don't like undead influences, she hates the undead. And she'll reward mortals who go out and destroy vampires, but also necromancers who are responsible for creating undead menaces and things like that. And obviously light is quite a holy concept, It's like smite the unholy with this fiery light and kill everything that's, of that nature. But she's done a lot of bad things too, like with the Aelids, for example, helping them enslave all the people and so on, and creating this champion that was fighting against Palinor. And
because it's like she's not this entirely like just as you're saying, like a lot of her statues look quite angelic, and the light behind her head's
it's quite
almost
egoic.
like a halo.
It's quite egoic that she chooses to look like that as well.
Yeah,
the way she talks about herself, even she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and take my splendor, somewhere." She's quite a fan of herself, kind of like Azura.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's quite common. Like, people often cite Meridia and Azura as like, oh, they're not the Daedric princes that aren't wholly evil, but it's just they often have like the presentation of benevolence and altruism. Oh, I love my followers, or in Meridia's case is a bit more like, I'm doing the right thing, purifying with my purifying light. But they're kind of, that's I guess the fault maybe of the Daedra is that they are, they are like, like you're saying, like egotistic in the way that they're a personality. They're a very set personhood rather than this sort of like loose, like, like Christian ideas of God and so on. It's a bit more like this omnipotent, like it is do you know what I mean? It's a cross being like, look, I'm not a theologist in terms of like, I don't want to step on anyone's toes in regards to Christianity, but he's a very big, all omnipotent force rather than one sort of Daedric prince working within a universe full of other omnipotent forces, if that makes sense.
And one thing about the element of light is not just her aesthetic, which is very light and holy, as we've already said, but it's like when you think about this universe, it's like light comes through rifts in the world to Etheria. So the light is just coming straight from Etheria. So it's inherently very like magical and Adric in a sense. So if she shows herself as being like a goddess of light, then it's hard to really look at her as a Daedra other than the fact that she exists in Oblivion.
She's the kind of like Azura in the way when you dig underneath, like they're not like the best like people. Like she's pretty crook in the way that she, you know, she can bestow immortality to people, but she makes them her purified, which like removes all of their free will and ability to have any agency over themselves. So she kind of just turns you into like a.
It's funny, isn't it? Because she does exactly what necromancers do, which is create an undying... It's got nothing to do with, I'm upholding the circle of life. That's why I don't like the undead, because she'll go and create these purified, which can be people or animals. I mean, I know Elder Scrolls Online just wants you to be able to have a Meridian saber cat with the purified aesthetic. But, you know, they don't have any disease. They live forever. Everything sounds great until you realize that they're essentially full-on slaves under her command. Like, they have no free will, and, you know, these glowing yellow eyes. It kind of sounds
it's a bit of a facade.
Yeah, it's
like, you know, when she uses terms like purified, it's kind of a bit hypocritical coming from a corrupted Magna Gi who has got consorted with illicit spectra and become a Daedra. She's hardly the purest of lights.
She's to be honest, it's funny to think about it like this, because you're like, kind of good Daedric prince on a face value look, but she's probably one of the more psychotic ones out there. And the way that and I mean by psychotic is that she's deluded. You know, she really, like, at least Mehrunes Dagon, like, you go psychotic as destruction or something, but he's actually quite like
consistent.
Yeah, I think it's her opposition to Molag Bal that gives her a lot of aside from her aesthetic, that makes her seem so good. It's just because he's considered the worst, and for the most part, unless you're looking at Khajiit mythology, where it seems to be the opposite, but normally they're considered opposing forces.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that. So that's one of the examples in the ancient, and this is to do with the ESO main storyline. So back in the time when you've got the Aelids and they've got their power, there's the Molag Bal worshipping city of Abergalis and the city of Daeladil, which is all the Meridia worshippers, and they were at odds. And basically Molag Bal gifted them the Mortem Vivicus, which is like some like generic Molag Bal ESO super weapon that they threw in there, to be honest, as I take. And then there's an opposite one to that, which is the Prismatic Core, which is used against it or something. But basically, I think Abergalis gets screwed over in the end. Meridia's lot win, but there's just one example of that sort of rivalry is shown there. And I'm pretty sure, isn't it? It's a town, like a whole town gets pushed into Cold Harbor later.
Yeah, the Hollow City.
Yeah,
it gets pulled into Cold Harbor, but Meridia's kind of magic, or however you want to call it, protects it. So it's kind of like a piece of life, a piece of living Nirn that exists in Cold Harbor that defies Molag Bal.
Yeah. And, Meridia plays her part in helping prevent the plane meld and so on. And she's kind of like, it's kind of hard because, like, I guess the other big piece is her whole part that she plays in the Somerset Isles DLC, where you have the triad of Clavicus Nocturnal, and Mephala, who are teaming up to basically use the heart of the Crystal Tower to the heart of Transparent Law. The idea was they were going to use it together for power, but then Nocturnal screwed over Clavicus and Mephala. But then Meridia plays a role alongside you to stop Nocturnal from actually succeeding. And there's this Golden Knight character who was actually a guy, I think it's called Darian or something, a character that you met earlier in the Daggerfall Covenant questline, but he'd become the like a champion of Meridia using Dawnbreaker. You
could almost argue that she's more of a net positive onto the world than she is a net negative. If you think about it, as much as she's done all this, like, questionable stuff, I'm not saying she's a saint, but I feel like, helping Aelids with some of their, questionable activities and, purifying certain people. By the way, a lot of the purified want to be. They're like followers that are like, please take away my free will. There are unwilling ones as well. But comparing that, which is obviously objectively, it's bad by our moral standards. compared to her saving the world or having a hand in saving the world on multiple occasions.
Yeah. It's that kind of thing, though. Sometimes I feel like it's more so in her interest, though. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, I get the vibe that she's helping, not for any benevolent need, but because she hates Merlag Bal. She doesn't want that. It's not in her good interest to have.
I'm not saying, I'm not arguing about a morality. It's just like net positive still. Like, if you were living there and you could snap your fingers and make Meridia disappear, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd keep her in case Merlag Bal comes back and she'll
I guess
help
a
out.
lot of those Aelids would be worshipping other Daedra, if not for Meridia as well. And there's a good chance that some of the more egregious Aelid cities would have been doing, you know, worse stuff if it were a different prince.
But couldn't you also make the argument that Meridia was enough of a soft stepping stone, but they wouldn't go as far as Merlag Bal? So if there was no Meridia option, they just wouldn't enter into it at all.
Whereas there's no gateway to Daedra worship at all.
But is that canon that it was gateway, or is that just
no? That was just me.
Yeah, we don't know that chronologically they started worshipping Meridia first. I don't think.
No, the only reason I think that's a sound enough theory, just because also the prevalence of Meridia worship over the other Daedric princes as well. Like, there were it seems that there were more,
and they would have worshipped Magnus before they even left for the mainland anyway, when they were still kind of part of the Oldmer. So it does follow along, but yeah, no, I know what you mean though. She's kind of, whether she means to or not, is doing general positives, at least, you know, compared to some of the Daedra.
Yeah, I mean, morally for the humans, she kind of it sucked. Like, did nothing good for all of humankind, and I don't know if it really done. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if how she feels about the races of men versus elves. Anyway, I mean, all I'm going off is she's helped elves before, like, you know, Aelids, and sort of favorably looked upon them. But
she tends
to
help.
Was Darian a Breton? Yeah, I was just saying Darian. I think he was a Breton, wasn't he? Yeah. So I guess maybe she just likes the elven aspects of him.
I think you have to consider as well, especially when you look at the more egocentric Daedra, they tend to like those who worship them. And obviously the Aelids being having their different elements and this big focus on light, you know, they have this obsession with light. They all chose to really revere her. So of course she's going to... It's not like a Daedra has to help whoever reveres them, but it kind of makes sense for her to like them because they feed that ego.
Here's a chicken or egg scenario for you. I wonder if the Aelids, like, you know, advances in technology with light-related stuff, you know, the Welkin stones and the Vala stones, if that was actually something they invented, then they kind of got, you know, got it on for Meridia, or if it was actually the reverse and Meridia helped them harness these technologies.
Almost in a way that, like, the good Daedra guided their chosen people from the Oldmer. Perhaps Meridia did it with a group of her own.
I mean, if you... Because that's the other thing that kind of makes it seem that Meridia is very important to the Aelids broadly, is the, you know, the reverence for light, which seemed to go through a lot of them as the element, and the Vala stones and the technology. Also, you know, you've got big figures like Umril the Unfeathered as, you know, Meridia's champion and so on.
Which is a good argument for why she might have gone sour on humans who would venerate Shor/Shazar. You know, considering you've got Pelennor coming along and messing things up.
Yeah, and let's not forget Knights of the Nine as well. Like the Aurorans coming in and slaughtering at a church, and that's not too nice.
Well, we can kind of talk about the Aurorans a little bit. So, and I like the phrasing. I might just want to... the idealized humanoid race of Daedra in the service. Yeah, like you said, made from pure light. But I love that, like, sort of her because she I guess she would be a little bit of an idealist in the way that she kind of, like, she doesn't like the idea of free will. She likes them to be like perfect followers. Purity as well is something else that's really, like, you know, a bit of her obsession. So you don't want to leave any room for error
and she's said to have golden saints in her realm as well.
Yeah, which is fair. We kind of talked about a little bit way back in the Golden Saint episode, but they're like how we were talking about how Daedra in general aren't just necessarily created and bound to one prince. That perhaps there's the Golden Saints. Maybe it seems like the Golden Saints would be native to here. Yeah, that's just on vibes. But then some went to the service of in the Shivering Isles. Same deal with the Dark Seducers. Well, some of the Dark Seducers, not all of them. But yeah, some of the Aurorans are pretty cool. Like when you go through like the whole the Symphony of Blades, like character, like some of them, the ones that we don't see in Oblivion but see in ESO, like this big, like light figure kind of thing. But anything scaled, like winged, golden, like it's funny. There's a lot of crossover in the motifs between Auriel and Aelid stuff and Meridia, or Aurorans and all her architecture and stuff that she enjoys.
Oh yeah, I think their armor is so cool. Like Auroran armor, especially in Oblivion, it has this kind of chunky alien look to it.
And there's a phosphorescent Auroran, blue in hue. There's some different like coloured. I like that a little bit, the play on colours, because I mean we could talk about Meridia's coloured rooms. So it's like all of this big coral reef, but kind of metaphysical kind of looking, and there's
with
like
floating stones and stuff.
Yeah.
It's said to be quite boring though. Which
yeah,
I can kind of agree with. I think once you're there and you take it all in, you just kind of listen to Meridia's sermons or just kind of look at some floating rocks.
I feel like that's usually with most, like anything that, look, let's be honest, anything that kind of restricts free will gets a little bit more boring. Like Jiggalag sounds boring as hell, like he's living in his existence or something, same as Meridia when she's obsessed with it.
Particularly when there's no human society. Exactly. That's why Shea Gorath's realm's cool, because there's people there.
Yeah, just because so different. But yeah, I mean we can move on to. Oh well, actually, we should probably mention her Khajiit interpretation. So Meridnunda, the false spirit of greed. This is the greed kind of angle a little bit more that's thrown on, because I feel like Meridia's kind of ignored in most pantheons, to be honest. Like outside of she's a Daedra or the Aelid worship of her, which was favourable, most of the negative stuff comes from this. So daughter of Magarus, who is the equivalent of Magnus in the normal pantheons. But she actually she got together with Dagon and Molag Bal in this, which is kind of maybe Baron's Dagon makes a bit of sense, maybe, but Molag Bal doesn't. But
yeah,
I mean,
because the idea, right, is that Molag imprisoned Dagon, and then Meridia and Molag Bal both kind of used him as a tool, essentially, to assault the Lunar Lattice. And Azura kind of foiled that plan. And I think it says, I'd have to find it now, but I think the idea was that Azura actually, in the Khajiit mythology, forced Meridia to exist in a prison of mirrors, which is what her coloured rooms actually were to them. So it was, it's not so much that she carved out her own beautiful space, it's that she got forced into it and has kind of had to live with it. And it's kind of like the egoism you were talking about, Michael, where it's like, well, now she's in a cage of mirrors where, she's just forced to reflect upon herself for eternity.
Yeah. Although it does say that she escaped, I think, which sounds a bit odd. If that was
the
her
nomad.
realm. Yeah,
the
nomads say she has since escaped.
And modern Khajiit don't even acknowledge those myths, period. Because the whole riddle thought.
Yeah, I don't like that. I really wish that the Khajiit kept their old worship. It was much more interesting. But you could say the same about a lot of provinces and races on Tamriel. I mean, especially the Nords in Skyrim, who now seem all particularly imperialized and different.
Yeah, you know what's a crazy realization I had as we were coming into this is because we're going to be talking about her artifacts, but prior to Dawnbreaker, she had like nothing. Because the ring of Khajiiti is, as we know, is the ring that Rajin, the thief god of the Khajiit people, stole off one of Mephala arms, and Mephala has given the gift before. Oh, has she? Or, I can't remember. Am I just? Or was it just stolen from her, or has she given it? Hold on. I'm pretty sure it's been given by Mephala.
I thought so as well.
Yeah, for some reason I'm just second-guessing myself. Yeah, Meridia and Mephala. Yeah. But, yeah, so that ring, it's, it's not even... I don't even know how it got into her possession, really. Or how she's in the position to... Oh, unless... somehow during the Somerset Isles DLC or something, when she was opposed against the Triad and so on, maybe she she got it from a father.
I mean, they
somewhere
can
there
also
and she could
tempt it off
gift
mortals as well. Like if someone helped Mephala and got the ring, you know,
True.
They can always say, "Oh, give me that ring and I'll give you immortality," and then turns them into a purified and tricks them. Who knows? But yeah, and Dawnbreaker, it's hard to believe because it's such a favorite artifact, and most of the most favorite artifacts have been around forever, but it's a Skyrim thing. Obviously, it's in the Elder Scrolls Online, but it was put into Skyrim first as this, you know, holy light sword, which causes undead to have, you know, rays of light explode on them and damage others around them and make them flee. It's the ultimate paladin type sword, which again just contributes to her kind of holy image, because that stuff is usually associated with those who are striving for what they perceive as a moral good.
Burning away corruption and false life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but false life is her definition.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I even remember in Oblivion, I'm pretty sure her quest was really boring.
Yeah, you
like
go
kill some
and
bears or something.
Kill some bears.
Is that the one? Or was that near there? I'm thinking of a different quest then.
Kill bears.
Next to it. Destroying necromancers.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you know I'm pretty sure the shrine is next to a little settlement where you go and kill a bunch of bears for this guy, and I don't know, in my head they always got linked. In a head.
Right.
Look, bears, necromancers.
Wasn't it the hold on, let me just double check. Yeah, it is. It's literally just go and kill some necromancers.
Yeah.
But I mean, Azura's quest was pretty boring as well. It was just go kill some vampires. And
Yeah. But I guess, and she played, then you get the Ring of Khajiit, and then the champion of Cyrodiil goes on to sort of take the role of Penelon or Whitestrake in the fight against Umaril the Unfeathered.
You know her purified are called lustrants. Weird name.
Like luster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the other things like we saw in the prismatic core is her other one, which is the powerful prismatic. It's a core powerful crystal that powered the prismatic weapon, and it was used by the forces of Daedric against the Molag Bal worshipping of Abigalis to destroy the Mortem Vivicus. So they used one weapon to destroy the other one, and she
also has this relic called Meridia's Brilliance, which isn't listed as an artifact. It kind of just looks like Meridia's beacon, which, by the way, how annoying is that? But massive and kind of like honey-colored. When I say massive, just bigger and honey-colored. It's from Elder Scrolls Online. You go and get it to basically put light on something and kill.
I tell you what.
Yeah, like, to purge the temple of the corruption plaguing it. It's pretty. Sounds like Skyrim, doesn't it?
I can imagine Dawnbreaker is going to come back, but imagine I feel like there's a lot of potential with just cool, like holy looking artifacts. Like imagine like even a cuirass kind of thing, or like some kind of or cuirass or whatever it's pronounced, like armor piece, but with like, you know, some sort of like eagly wing looking thing on it, or some like there's just, and like, you know, Auroran type armor stuff. Yeah. Like there's so much cool stuff that could be done. I guess we can also just mention, I'll bring it up, it's from the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor. I would just quickly read this bit on her temple. So Kilcreath Temple's been around for a while, so set in the mountains, that's where you go in Skyrim as well. Stands as a monument to Daedric Prince Meridia. Though the worship of the Daedric princes is at best a controversial subject in Tamriel, the architectural splendor and calm environs alone make the temple worth a visit. Those willing to take part in heretical conversation will find the priests of Kilcreath Temple warm and hospitable, and more willing to provide travelers with foodstuffs and warm beds. Visitors are advised to avoid travel during feasts of high sun and low sun, when the temple's caretakers close its doors to conduct secret rites.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's that high sun, low sun about.
I don't know. That's why it's secret.
I guess so.
Secret rites by the priests.
Yeah. She is a pretty straightforward Daedra.
Yeah.
I mean, just what you said there, that makes me think of Azura, talking about, you know, the positioning of the sun, and when you got the low sun, and it's kind of like the realms of twilight.
Oh.
I feel like there's got to be more between her and Azura than we know about.
High sun, low sun, yeah. Dawn, dusk.
Yeah, it's hard to
look,
say.
they're both egotistical as hell. Yeah, they both like have a facade of some kind of, benevolence, but they're not on a deeper level. But I guess you can argue that they both bring kind of good. I mean, I would say Azura is far more vindictive for sure, egotistical. I think just with the whole like Narrowmore deal and some other stories, as opposed to Meridia. But
yeah, it is kind of just an Elder Scrolls Online thing as well. But I like the kind of armor styles you can get. The Meridian armor basically just looks kind of like Auroran stuff.
Yeah,
but they put in lore about like Meridia cultists, and they talk about the different armor pieces and weapons, and they say light and vibration affect crystals, so Meridian cultists carry crystals into battle, believing it allows Meridia to bless their moves directly, and things like that. Yeah.
I remember we were talking about the inspiration for Ayleid kind of architecture and their dress and stuff like that, and because there were the bird people of Central Cyrodiil that obviously must have played some role. So I guess that combined with Meridia's Auroran aesthetic, they were pretty much guaranteed to end up looking the way they look now. I wonder if I doubt it, but I wonder if they have any kind of relation to Meridia as well. But
the bird people.
Yeah, I mean, we know nothing about the bird people really, other than they're just a native beast race, right?
It is interesting to think what had the most influence on elven armor styles and stuff like that, isn't it?
Well, I wonder how it worked. I mean, the only thing I guess is that Auriel seems to have been always envisioned with like an eagle, and like eagle symbolism's always been there. True. So there's always been some bird-like stuff already. I think the thing that really drives home that Ayleid sort of is in the Songs of Pelennor, like the mentions of beads and stuff, and like arrows like beaks and stuff. They just make it seem that little bit extra like tropically vibe. You know what I mean? Like, as you can imagine.
Yeah, they almost seemed they looked a little more tribal at the times. Like the description of Pelennor when his blade is covered in the blood and bits of the Ayleids, and there's just like beads and things hanging off of it. So it seems like he's gone and butchered a bunch of tribal types as opposed to this really high society of Ayleid.
If you look at I'll put it up on screen as well if I can find it. But for the Beyond Skyrim project, there's one for the rest. Obviously, there's Bruma, but there's the rest of Cyrodiil as well. But they've done art in that for a lot of the Ayleids and so on, and some of them have really cool. Like, I prefer to envision them like they do as well. Like some of the real more bird-like features, but it's different. It's a little bit more like a tropical kind of vibe. Or not tropical might be the wrong word, but it's a little bit different to just sort of the elven eagle kind of.
Yeah, more like the kind of when you imagine Cyrodiil in as more of a rainforest, kind of like how you'd imagine, almost like an Amazonian tribe aesthetic going on, because the idea is they would have lived more in a rainforest or a jungle, or however it was before it kind of just looked. Like the way it looks in Oblivion looks a bit different.
Yeah, like if you even just type, Ayleid armor, have a look. There's some cool. I'll put it up because it has all like the blue feathers and stuff as well, and like the talent feet. I don't know. It just looks a little bit different to like eagle symbolism stuff. Even I don't know why, but if you look at the Ayleid boots from Oblivion, even they to me don't remind me of much of like eagle. I mean, they kind of look like duck feet, to be honest. But you know what I'm saying is like, the elven armor in Oblivion even just feels a bit different to elven armor in Skyrim, which is very clearly that like eagle look. I guess more emphasis on the wings in the Skyrim version.
Yeah. I guess I mean Oblivion still looks kind of like birdish, like the boots and the helmet, and the pauldrons go super wide, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but I think that what do you reckon? Elder Scrolls 6? Do you reckon she'll get fleshed out decently? Have enough, or if you reckon it will just be more of the same? Like her Daedric quest, because I can't really. The only problem with her sphere being so straightforward and kind of like strict it's kind of like, what are you going to expect? You're going to be killing some kind of necromantic thing.
Look,
or
you can almost
cleansing some
guarantee
dirt.
that you're going to be getting Dawnbreaker, because Bethesda loves to give the fans the things that have become, iconic, right? And Dawnbreaker now is like a weapon people cosplay with, and it's just super loved by everyone. So they'll get that involved as much as they can. But yeah, it might just be a simple quest.
You talked about it in the Elder Scrolls 6 Daedric Prince's video, but it's like the idea of having Daedric princes pitted against one another in quests and you sort of taking sides, I think is such a much more interesting way to do with the Daedric princes, because that's how you get their personality. Like Meridia, before ESO, Meridia's personality was almost nothing. But when you get into the ESO stuff, it's like she's pitted against Molag Bal, and you kind of get... You see a lot of people's identities through their relationships and how they interact with people.
And it makes you feel like the world doesn't revolve around you as well. It's like they're not there to care about you. They care about other things. You're just helping them with, whatever their issues are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely agree. It's the relationships that make things interesting. And it also would let you have more artifacts too. You help them once. Maybe you help every Daedric prince once. You can do a base quest, get an artifact for them. But then you come into other quests when you've completed 2 different Daedric princes quests who will be at odds, and you're forced to help one or the other in a conflict they have, which enhances replayability and allows you to get more artifacts. Because let's face it, the Daedric princes have so many artifacts, and if we're not going to have another Elder Scrolls game for who knows how long after Elder Scrolls 6... Let's make it jam-packed with artifacts to get.
I think either, like, you could go Molag Bal as an enemy. Nocturnal would be a really good one. In the same way that,
she was in Elder Scrolls Online. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Somerset Isles thing. But it's just like, just the simple... I mean, it's a basic ass dichotomy, but you've got, like, shadows and light. It's just a cool kind of...
I mean, she corrupted Dawnbreaker in the Elder Scrolls Online. Nocturnal did.
Yeah.
And I believe that the champion you mentioned, that knight of Meridia, sacrificed himself to cleanse it. Yeah.
Darian Goulard or something.
Gautier.
Yeah. Something French.
Yeah, that's what made me think Breton. But then I think I looked it up before. It's like, no, he's indistinct race. So who knows? But
I mean, just to talk about, I guess, the King Narrowmore, it was of Garlus Malata, which was the Aelid city under his rule, and he was another big Daedric prince, Meridia devotee, and he converted his entire city, and he actually became a Meridian purified himself, so he could serve all eternity. And it was originally thought that, the humans came and sieged Garlus Malata and got rid of it, but it's actually sunk, or to itself or something, it's sunk. Can't remember, because I'm pretty sure this is the same one that Garlus Malata, I'm pretty sure, is where you go to fight Umril in... Hold on, let me just find Oblivion, because it's that one that's near it's that one that's near the sea, like right on the sea there, and you go there to
that was such a cool quest.
No, it's cool stuff. The only problem with Knights of the Iron, actually going collecting all of the things is kind of boring, but the whole concept and the lore that comes with it's mad.
Yeah, I really can't see her having a huge role in the Elder Scrolls 6. I feel like there would be a solid 5 or 6 princes who would get major priority over her for having major quest lines or even DLCs, because Knights of the Nine, unfortunately, really didn't add a great deal to talk about with her, but it kind of counts as her having her go, if that makes sense. So there's probably other princes who'd get priority.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it. Unless you guys have anything else to add to Meridia. She is one of the smaller princes, so...
Yeah, she's one of the most interesting in some ways, because kind of just learning her origin and about the Magna Gi, but once you get over that hurdle, it is quite straightforward.
Yeah. I like hearing about her in other mythologies, but there's nothing that... I just don't think there is that. She's not diverse enough to really dive into more. Like, her, you kind of know it. It's upfront, straightforward. Purity, light, daddy issues with Magnus. That's about it.
the potential is there for her to have really cool lore, because she should have a lot more interactions with the Daedric princes, for example. But a lot of what actually makes her interesting is the people who worship her. Like the Ayleids are probably the most interesting part about Meridia is the Ayleids. So
yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
I'm just watching the Umaril fight right now in the clouds. It's just so cool. It's so cool, and then you fall back down.
It's funny. I wonder, because we don't really have a chronology for when Jiggalag was cursed and turned into Sheogorath, and that whole thing started. But Meridia is also known violent loathing of disorder and irrational anger towards entities she deems impure, and hatred of mortal free will and defiance. But like, I wonder what her relationship would have been with Jiggalag if.
Yeah, well, when the Daedric princes kind of convened to screw over Jiggalag, perhaps she was kind of against that idea. Maybe she was actually more in support of Jiggalag if she was there for that.
Yeah. Or perhaps because she's selfish and doesn't want to get, beat out by an OP Jiggalag. Because that's the problem. Remember,
he's too overpowered. He was too overpowered. And you have to consider as well that this sounds silly. It sounds like it doesn't make sense. But order is subjective in the sense of like her order is not necessarily the same idea of his order. What she deems purity and everything working the way it should may not be, they may not see eye to eye.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I think that wraps it up.
That's about it.
I think that wraps up Meridia. Well, thank you everyone for watching. It has been a shorter one compared to our longer iceberg ones. But we'll be back again with more Elder Scrolls goodness very soon.